Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of Arcana Unearthed. If you're new here, I am Wayne Ingram. I am the Dungeon Master here at Bardic Quest for our actual play show and a D&D enthusiast slash full-time Dungeon Master. This series we're looking at the latest news and things coming out of the 2024 rules update for D&D, and there's lots of news coming out. Normally I do these live, but with it being the summer holidays and trying to find that time where it's quiet in the house and people aren't trying to sleep at the same time is very difficult. So I'm just grabbing these moments where I can, recording as many of these as I can to put out at regular intervals as the news comes out rather than doing them live. Live videos will return when my children return to school. I wanted to talk in this particular video about the new news that is coming out of GenCon specifically, because there have been early sales of the Player's Handbook at GenCon. And I wanted to talk about the tools and crafting rules that have been updated in the 2024 Player's Handbook, because there's some really interesting stuff that has emerged, and a lot of people have been eager to know about these crafting rules that they have been talking about for a couple of months now, but not really shared too much detail on. One of the things about tools specifically, I think I'm actually more excited about the tools rules updates than I am necessarily the crafting rules myself, because I've always felt like in 5th edition tools were underutilized a little bit in the core rules, and it's nice to see that now they're getting a little bit of love. They got some love in Xanathar's Guide to Everything as well, but because that wasn't part of the core rulebook, it always feels like an optional rule with what they do with things, and so then things don't move over into the general zeitgeist of the game. Whereas now that they're introducing some of that stuff that they introduced into Xanathar's, into the core rules, and also giving it a bit of a spruce up as well. So I'm really excited about the tools stuff, which we'll touch on in a moment, because I'm taking a look at this tools blog that they posted on D&D Beyond, which kind of lines up with what I'm hearing from some of the YouTubers as well that I follow. They acknowledge at the top of this article that perhaps tools needed a little bit of love, and so they have given them some love in the 2024 rules. They're going to spill some beans on the crafting of potions of healing, armor, and spell scrolls as well. They have also stated that there will be rules for crafting cooler things in the Dungeon Master's Guide, perhaps as optional rules maybe. When you create your character in the 2024 Player's Handbook, obviously you're going to choose equipment and gold, and you can then also use some of this equipment, particularly the tools, to craft some things. So the new rules will allow any character with proficiency in a particular tool, be that smith's tools, herbalism kit, disguise kits, to craft items from that tool's crafting list. So each tool is now going to have an item that you can craft using that tool, which is already a vast improvement on what exists in the 2014 Player's Handbook, because there is nothing like that really explicitly stated in the Player's Handbook in 2014 version. So any proficiency, any tool, it seems, is now going to have a list of items that can be crafted using that tool. So, for example, if you wanted to brew potions of healing on the fly, you'd need to be proficient in a herbalism kit. So the herbalism kit is what will allow you, as a character, to brew potions of healing. Likewise, a disguise kit will allow you, the example they give here, is to sew yourself a dragon costume. Now, interestingly, they have put costume with a capital C here, which suggests to me that a costume is a very specific item that is being included in the list. And the thing that I love about this is it feels as though they're giving some love to mundane items again. And it's one of the other criticisms I had for 5th edition, is that the adventuring gear seemed mostly unimportant. And the idea of using adventuring gear rather than just using your abilities felt a little bit like a optimal choice to make, because so many of the items just didn't do much or weren't worth anything, really, in terms of mechanical benefits. This suggests to me that particularly the fact that the tools themselves are giving you mechanical benefits is just such a vast improvement, particularly for those DMs who want to run a low magic setting. These tools will become a fundamental thing for just giving things a little bit of a boost without necessarily a need for magic. Crafting a non-magical item requires you to collect a material worth half the cost of purchasing it, rounded down. The example they give here is that you'd need 25 gold pieces of raw materials to make Alchemist Fire, which is worth 50 gold pieces. Now, interestingly, one of the major changes that they've made to the crafting system, because don't forget that crafting exists in the 2014 Player's Handbook as a downtime activity. So if you are crafting mundane items, that is something that you could do as a downtime activity. It already exists. So, for example, the plate armor would cost, I think it's 1,500 gold. Because it costs 1,500 gold, it would take you 300 days. That's 300 days worth of 5 gold pieces per day crafting, if that makes sense. So you can craft 5 gold piece increments to the value of the item, which is why it takes 300 days. But they've changed it so that actually you're making progress in 10 gold piece increments, which means you can do it in half the time that you could in 2014 Player's Handbook, which is a vast improvement, not only in terms of the use of the downtime activity, because I don't know of any D&D 5th edition campaign that has lasted 300 days for a start. If it's going to take you 300 days, you may as well just spend the gold. It's economically, you're much more likely to get 1,500 gold pieces going adventuring for a week than you are spending 300 days hammering away at a suit of armor. But also, obviously, the quality of life improvement in tracking things in 10 gold piece increments is much easier on the bookkeeping because you just dig 0. You know what I mean. It's far easier to track 10 gold piece increments than it is 5 gold piece increments. It's not a major difference in terms of quality of life, but it's a small one. Just streamlines things a little bit more, which I'm always a fan of when it comes to the bookkeeping side of things. Any way you can keep the bookkeeping simple, the better, without actually completely just removing the feature from the game, which is what they've done with many things. If you also find that that's not fast enough for you doing the 150 days, there is a crafter origin feat where you'll pick up proficiency with 3 different artisan's tools and the ability to create useful items like torches, rope, nets, and grappling hooks can happen overnight as part of the crafter origin. Non-magical items that you buy are 20% off. Oh, for the crafter origin, I'm guessing. 20% off as part of that crafter origin feat. So you get 20% off non-magical items. That's pretty cool as well, as a feat. And now we get into kind of using your tools a little bit more. They mention in this article that Xanathar's Guide to Everything expanded a lot on how you can use tools by suggesting how they could assist you in various ability checks, such as the example they give here, using the investigation and cobbler's tools to track where somebody has been based on their shoes. So taking a look at the shoes, using your cobbler's expertise to take a look at those and be like, oh, I think they've been here. Which is a great concept in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. In fact, it was a really neat section. So page 78 of the Xanathar's Guide to Everything gives this whole section, which you can probably see here, which has got all of these. Each one of these is like a different toolkit, which tells you what's in it, and tells you what skills you can use, and it also gives you some sample DCs on how you can use them as well. A really cool thing, but again, it wasn't in the core rules, so this is something that often got overlooked. What they are doing in the 2024 Player's Handbook is taking those ideas and putting them into the core rules to help inspire DMs and players to utilize tools more frequently with a streamlined set of suggestions, is what they're saying here. So that'll be interesting to see, and maybe more suggestions might come out in other books. But I think the baseline idea of, utilize your tools for things other than nothing, because most of the tools had no purpose whatsoever. Here are ways that you can use them. So tools are now tied to one ability score, which you use when making an ability check with that tool, which is like what we saw with the Thieves tools. It was a dexterity check, or a sleight of hand check, actually, specifically, with Thieves tools. So now they've done that with every single tool. They've given a base ability that it is tied to. Perhaps the Cobbler's tools might be intelligence, for example, because of the skill used for intelligence, or maybe dexterity, because of the physical skill used. Who knows? We will find out. The rogues will utilize their Thieves tools much in the same way as they did before, but the new rules, which were ones, again, that were actually included in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, because I think they realized they'd found something cool with the tools, almost accidentally. In fact, I think Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford had recently admitted that the tools thing was a mostly cosmetic narrative thing rather than necessarily anything that had mechanical benefit or was intended to have mechanical benefit, which I agree, and I'm glad that they've come to that realization. So this rule that they're introducing now into the core rules, which was in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, is this idea now that if you have... So when you use a tool, for those that are not familiar, when you use a tool in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, you add your proficiency bonus to your roll if you are proficient in the tool. The problem is that you can't add your proficiency bonus to something twice, unless you have expertise or whatever, but that's a different thing. So you don't stack your proficiency bonus, you get it once. The rules were problematic because if you were proficient in a skill that also happened to line up with the skill that you needed to use the tool, there was actually no bonus for using the tool in the first place. So they've introduced into the core rules something that they introduced in Xanathar's, which is this idea that if you have proficiency in both the skill and the tools, then you're in a position where it's actually going to give you advantage on the roll as well. So it does stack up in some capacity. You'd have advantage, for example, on the sleight of hand skill and the Thieves tools check. You have proficiency in sleight of hand and the Thieves tools, which would then give you advantage. They've also said you will need proficiency with a tool to craft an item on its list, but you don't need proficiency to use it for an ability check. So you can use the tool, whether you're proficient or not, to make the ability check. You just won't get the proficiency bonus. But if you want to craft anything from the crafting list, you will need to be proficient in it. Each tool includes a list of things a player can use it for when they take the utilize action, which is a new type of action being included in the rules, along with the DC for that action. So it's be a list of things to use to utilize the tool for, and the list of DCs, much like it did in Xanathar's, as I showed you on those little tables. Now, I do want to flag up the utilize action, because we were seeing things like this in the playtest materials, and I'm really hoping that things like having the utilize actions means that they are defining exploration actions, much in the way that Pathfinder does. I'm really hoping that's what they're doing, so that when it comes to taking the exploration of a dungeon, for example, they can say the utilize action takes 10 minutes, so there's your 10-minute dungeon turn, and that they really tighten up the exploration of... I really hope that they do, because it was one of my biggest bugbears with the current version of 5th edition, is that the exploration is just so wishy-washy in the way that it approaches things, and it needs tightening up, and many people have had to write books about how to tighten up the exploration of 5th edition. So I'm really hoping that they've done that tightening up with things like this utilize action. That got me very excited to see that had made it not only out of the playtest, but into the core rules as well. We shall see. Creative ways to use tools in your build. Here we are, we have some examples here. You can turn your caster into a scroll crafter with calligrapher's supplies. The first step to creating a magical infinite library of scrolls you've always dreamed of will only cost you the 10 gold to buy a set of calligrapher's supplies, which are now going to be your best friend when it comes to creating things. So the artisan, acolyte, sage, and scribe backgrounds will actually give you calligrapher's supplies as part of the origin. So these are great backgrounds to choose from if you are going to be a wizard, for example. Calligrapher supplies will be what you will use to mass manufacture those spell scrolls. You will still need to pay the crafting costs when it comes to creating these scrolls, though. You're going to use your Arcana check when you make your spell scrolls. The proficiency in the calligrapher's supplies will be what will serve as an alternative route to making them. So you're going to need your calligrapher's supplies. Again, you need to be proficient in calligrapher's supplies in order to create the spell scrolls, and then you're going to use your Arcana check to do. If, of course, you are proficient in the calligrapher's supplies and the Arcana, then, of course, you're going to be doing that with advantage, from what I understand. In either case, you'll still need to have the spell that your scribe prepared each day that you're working. So, as before, when you're scribing the spell, you are going to need to have the spell prepared. So, previously, so they're making a comparison here. The 2014 Player's Handbook only allowed you to craft non-magical objects with your downtime activities. In the 2024 Player's Handbook, scribing a spell scroll is similar to the expanded rules of scribing a spell scroll found in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Again, this bad boy cropping up. But it is a little cheaper, as a level 2 spell will cost you 100 gold instead of 250, and potentially more powerful as spells cast from a homemade scroll will use the spell save DC and attack bonus of the crafter. The person who crafts them is what sets the spell save DC, which I think is a new thing that was new in Xanathar's. I'm not too familiar with the scribing spell scroll rules in Xanathar's. I've definitely read them, but it was a long time ago. So they're cheaper to scribe now, which I don't know how I feel as a dungeon master, if I like things being cheaper, particularly when people need things to spend their gold on. Possession of calligrapher's supplies also allows you to craft ink for spells like Illusionary Script and Teleportation Circle, and the spell books you've spent hours copying spells into. One little bottle holds enough for 5 books. Rangers and sorcerers can make especially good use of these tools to churn out spell scrolls for the party wizard, helping them learn spells that overlap with their class lists, such as Alarm. Arcane Vigor, interestingly, has not been linked, which suggests it's a new spell. Banishment to Dispel Magic and Summon Elemental. They're also useful for the party rogue. In 2024 Player's Handbook, a thief rogue can cast spells from scrolls using the Use Magic Item class feature. So I wanted to flag something up here as well about this scribing of spells, because one of the things I really quite liked in the playtest material was that they had created a spell for wizards for scribing spells and writing spells into spell books and things like that. So there's this kind of catalogue of spells for the scribing of said things, which I actually really liked because I thought it was a clean mechanic and a clean thing to put into the class. It seems to me that what they've done here is they've actually removed the scribing of spells thing completely from the class. This suggests to me that the thing they were playtesting of making these things into spells for wizards to use is gone, and that they're returning to not having these things as spells, which from a narrative perspective, I think makes a lot of sense for it not to be a spell for the wizard to cast, but I did like the game design of it. I thought it was a really clean thing to put spells in the wizard's list that made these things feel specifically wizardy. Painter's supplies aren't just for artists. Wisdom-based casters might want to use, according to this D&D Beyond article, I don't know why specifically, maybe that'll become clear in a moment, a set of painter's supplies. Similar to the rules in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, the painter's supplies in the 2024 Player's Handbook enable you to paint accurate picture of someone you've seen before, because it is, of course, the paints that allow you to create an accurate picture, not your skill as an artist. And if the image is not accurate, it's not your fault. In addition to painting an accurate picture of somebody you've seen before, proficiency with this set of paints, brushes, and canvases would allow you to craft a druidic focus and a holy symbol. Interesting. Yes, DMs, you sent the player home with a box of crayons for good behaviour, and they showed up at school the next morning with a glowing orb that makes storms. Indeed. So painter supplies now allow you to create druidic focuses and holy symbols. I guess that makes some degree of sense. Not what I'd expect painter supplies to craft, but sure. And I think we're probably going to see a lot of this, where you're going to have weird, wacky things that you can do with all of these tools. Because now, the list of tools is just to remind people of some of the tools here, that all of these, from the sound of things, are going to be able to craft something. So if I go to the tools here, this is the complete list. First of all, the category of artisans tools. We have alchemist supplies, brewers supplies, calligraphers supplies, carpenters tools, cartographers tools, cobblers tools, cooks utensils, glass blowers tools, jewelers tools, leatherworkers tools, masons tools, painters supplies, potters tools, smiths tools, tinkers tools, weavers tools, woodcarvers tools. That's just the artisans tools section. Then you have disguise kit, you have forgery kit, then you have gaming sets like dice sets, dragon chess sets, playing card sets, and 3 dragon ante sets. Now, I don't imagine gaming sets are going to be able to allow you to craft anything, but weirder things have happened. You have a herbalism kit. Then you have musical instruments. Again, I don't imagine crafting with these, but still, these fall into the tools section. Bagpipes, drum, dulcimer, flute, lute, lyre, horn, pan flute, shawm, and viol. And then you have navigators tools, poisonous kits, thieves tools, and of course vehicles as well, which are a different category all in themselves. So that's a lot of things to be able to potentially craft with, even if you take out the instruments and the gaming sets. There's a lot of things here, so I imagine we're going to see a lot of strange and unusual things that crop up, where, like with using painter supplies to create a druidic focus and a holy symbol. Because I didn't see that coming. So yes, I think it'd be fun to see. And I'm really excited that they're making tools worthwhile again. Obviously, we've talked about potions and things. Obviously, any party is going to want to open a potions and poisons shop, it seems, according to this D&D Beyond article. And of course, I think that sounds like a bloody good idea, actually. And this is the thing with these tools as well. You're going to see this economy grow, I think, of people going, do you know what? I'm going to run a business for a few days. I'm going to brew some potions, brew some poisons, and I'm going to sell them in the market square. And that becomes very easy to achieve with these tools, which is going to be a lot of fun. What have we got here? Poisonous kits, cooks utensils, and herbalism kits. So the herbalism kit will allow you to craft antitoxins, candles, healer's kits, and potions of healing. So pick up a vial of antitoxin, which grants advantage on saving throws to avoid or end the poison condition for an hour. The flickering candles, dim light for 10-foot radius. Healer's kit, obviously helping you to stabilize. And the herbalism kit to identify poisonous plant growing on the bookshelves. But of course, the main draw of this shop are the shimmering bottles of healing liquor, each carefully brewed with, now here we go, a full day's work. So 1 day of downtime and 25 gold. If you have a herbalism kit, is all it will take for you to brew some healing potions. How do you want to spend your day preparing to go on this adventure? Which is something that I often throw out to my players. You don't have to leave now unless there's the ticking time bomb thing. And if there is a ticking clock, then that's a choice that they'll still have to make. They don't have to leave now, but they might need to fairly soon. For example, there's Tyranny of Dragons, where there's a quest hook which is like a 3-year-old lead. Oh yeah, this person went missing 3 years ago. Do you want to go see if you can find him? So that lead's pretty cold. Let's not rush, to stock up on some healing potions before they leave. And that's a very possible thing, courtesy of the herbalism kit, which may not have been possible to the same degree before. Also, they put a note in here, which, just a reminder, drinking a potion of healing, or any potion for that matter, I believe, any potion, but certainly definitely a potion of healing, is a bonus action, as opposed to an action now. That's going to be in the core rules rather than house ruled. As you probably guessed, I like things to cost my players, and if that's going to cost them an action, then great. There's an element of kidding there, but also a kernel of truth to it too. But I'm not particularly religious one way or the other about actions or bonus actions. If the core rules want to say bonus action, then that's fine with me. Finally then, the crafting of weapons and armor. At level 3, the Battlemaster Fighter will receive the Student of War feature, which grants proficiency with a set of artisans' tools. And the Smith's tools is a great choice, of course. The Smith's tools boasts a handsome list of items to craft, Picture your blacksmith turned hero wiping their sweaty heroic brow by the light of campfire as they work day by day. That's a pretty good imagery, to be fair, D&D Beyond. Thank you. Or pushing past the rogue to pry open a locked chest or door with tongs in hand and advantage on their strength athletics check. Ooh, now that's a cool idea that I didn't necessarily see coming on the smith's tools, but that's something that has been built in, so you can pry open a lock or chest with some tongs, and again, that makes total sense. So the smith's tools will allow you to craft any metal, melee weapon, medium armor, or heavy armor, making them excellent birthday gifts for the party plagued by rust monsters. They'll keep your ammunition stocked with firearm bullets, sling bullets, and endlessly useful ball bearings. Okay? Yes, just to reiterate, smith's tools will allow you to craft any metal, melee weapon, medium armor, or heavy armor. That's a pretty cool list of things to be able to craft. Now, presuming that the prices remain roughly the same, what we're looking at here in terms of crafting times, so let's say a sword, a long sword, would be 1.5 days of work to craft a long sword. That's alright, isn't it? Yeah, I can make you a long sword in 1.5 days, as opposed to the 3 days that it took before. Oh yeah, I'm going to spend a day and a half making a sword. Great sword is going to be 5 days, which I think is fair. That's 2d6 heavy two-handed weapon. 5 days, again, I've got a working week. I want a great sword, I'm going to make one for myself. Or, hey dude, do you need a great sword? Yeah, I'll make it for you. And then we obviously have weaver's tools and leatherworker's tools. Both sets will let you add a design to your homemade hide armor or stitch skulls onto your padded armor to commemorate each foe you've slain. Cool. Okay, I'm guessing that the leatherworker's tools will also allow you to make hide armor, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool indeed. So that's an overview of the crafting rules and the tools for the 2024 Player's Handbook, which I think is pretty damn awesome, and I'm very pleased with what I'm seeing here. As I say, I'm a big fan of the tools idea in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. It just wasn't necessarily very well actualized, so I'm glad to see that the actualization is in full effect now. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you do have any thoughts, by the way, do leave them in the comments. I've just realised how very laggy this recording is probably going to be. Yes, thank you very much for tuning in. Do leave your comments and your thoughts. I'm sure people are going to disagree with some of my takes on certain things. By all means, let me know. And we may just agree to disagree. But thanks very much for tuning in. I hope you like this rundown of the crafting tools. If you haven't already, by the way, and you have made it this far, do make sure you hit that and subscribe buttons. They really do help feed the algorithm gods and indeed let people know about our channel and this show. So thank you very much for joining me in this breakdown of the new tools and crafting system in the 2024 Player's Handbook. I'm keen to get my hands on a copy, so my pre-order better hurry up. But yes, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to smash that like button, and I will catch you next time.